Growing up as a teenager, life was difficult at home with a stepfather being in the home. I remember one time he took me by the back of my neck and he held me and said, "What are you going to change about yourself?" He wanted me to have 100 things that I would write down of how I would change myself. I was thinking, there must be something about me that is so wrong and shameful. I finished my high school, started working. It wasn't until I was about 21 that things started in my life. Like, it went really chaotic for a little while. And then I felt, I don't want to live this life this way. I want to be able to be responsible. I want to have a good life, but I didn't know how to do it.
The Holy Spirit
and I turned on the television and I saw someone talking about that God could be real to you, that He had a plan and He had a purpose for you, and that He loved me with an everlasting love and that He would never leave me. I responded by picking up the phone, and I had this beautiful person on the other line, and she said, "Well, you've called the right line. You've called 100 Huntley Street, and we're here to give you the good news that there's hope in the midst of what you're going through." And it was like a lifeline to me. It was like she threw the lifeline and I took it, and there was no turning back after that. And I was so touched by 100 Huntley Street, really, that it was available to me. I thought, there's other people like me at that age, when I was older, that I'm going to become a telephone prayer person. So I took the course at Huntley Street, and where I began to pray for people. In praying with someone, really being a good listener to someone doesn't mean that you have all the answers to them, but then it's leading them to the answer, leading them to God's word, and agreeing with them in prayer. It's also a place where they hang up the phone and they leave that place feeling that someone gets me, someone really just understands me, and that's the connection we need. I was married for just under 20 years, and we had 4 amazing boys. My ex-husband and I were very involved in our children's lives, going to church, raising them to know God. He ended up taking work outside of the area, moving to different provinces, working. It left a real emptiness in the home. And so I received a phone call. It was in just after Mother's Day that he wasn't coming home. It felt like the wind out of my sails, that I was going along in life, and all of a sudden I was left in this boat and I had nowhere to go. I didn't know what to do. The news of it was so shocking I could hardly hang the phone up. The healing journey for me, coming out of all of that, was difficult because I had 4 children. I forgot that as a woman, how rejecting that can be. And so I remember I was working and I was pulling out some x-rays and thinking, he left me. I am so ugly, I'm so fat, I couldn't even think of enough words. It reminds me of when I was a young girl, of all the 100 things that were wrong about me. It was like, I really am all those things. Then I thought of my faith, that I did have God who loved me. It was gonna be okay. I didn't have to be alone on this journey.
My mom left my dad when I was an early age, and after putting us through babysitters for a while, we had to go into foster care. Teen years was difficult for me because as a child I'd fallen out of a building, and I'm dyslexic, and I've dealt with a brain injury. I remember I have 2 scars on my face here where my friends took my face and decorated the back of a bus with it. I struggled in school, I struggled academically, I didn't quite fit in. And so I remember at one point I came home one day and I was tired of being laughed at and tired of people making fun of me. And I took a rope and I tied it up in my room. And I remember standing and looking up at the rope. I paused and I thought, I probably can't even do this right. I looked at the ceiling and I said, God, you're my last chance. And it wasn't an audible voice or whatever, but I heard God speak to me. And God said within my heart, he said, I'm not your last chance, I'm really your only chance. And that was a changing point. And why that change was because of a high school teacher who decided that standing up for his faith, having a Christian club there, I remember really him sharing the gospel several times, and that became my safety line. I really began to change as I began to invest in others because I saw people investing in me, and so it made a difference. So I went off to Bible college. I pastored a church out in Saskatchewan, and then I got recruited by Youth for Christ in Calgary, became the executive director there, worked with street kids, developed group homes along the way, got recruited by a Bible college and started teaching youth in camp ministry. I was married for about 30 years. And I remember at one point, it was sort of, I just finished my academic career. I'd been a Bible college president, and I just came out with a book where it seemed like the best year of my marriage. I came home one day, and my wife wasn't there. I read a letter that said, I've been seeing other men, I'm really sorry, you're a good man, and it went on. And it was like a standstill moment. And sometimes, you go through those moments, and it's paralyzing. My life had just radically changed. I remember looking into her eyes and saying, I forgive you. And she looked at me and she said, I didn't ask for your forgiveness. In some ways it should have worked, but I realized that I cannot always control another person. My daughter-in-law said to me one time, says, Dad, how come you haven't given up on your faith? I said, well, the foundation is so strong. It's because I have Jesus Christ that I can go through this. Life does happen. And, sometimes I realize that the worst day of my life has already taken place and I'm still standing. And in being in ministry, it's hard because people can be tough on you. I kept it a secret for a year so that she could come back. And then eventually it affected my employment, it affected my job. All of a sudden I felt like I was blacklisted, other colleges I would get to be number 2, the number 1 candidate, and then they'd find out my marital status. And then churches wouldn't look at me anymore. I finally get a job, and my job is about talking about hope. A church comes out, a small little church, they invite me to be their pastor, and they said, you know what? We believe that you can be part of our healing and that we can be part of yours. And I realized the Lord had given me a new testimony. There's an emptiness happens when you've been married for so long. It's so natural, and I don't think we're meant to be alone.
I met Derrick on a Christian dating site. Every time he would come for a date with me, he would tell me what time. I'd tell the boys I'm going to be home at 10:30, and then he would make these dinners for them. And he'd say, well, I don't want them to feel that I'm taking their mom from them. I want them to feel that they're gaining someone in their life.
And with Stacy, I felt like we got a second chance, both of us in a relationship. A lot of pain, similar stories, and yet God was bringing us together through a variety of different circumstances. I thought it was just amazing that here's a woman that's was willing to take me for my flaws, my laughter, and my jokes, and I just embraced her and her boys. I realized that the Lord was giving me a whole new ministry, that I can invest in a bunch of young men and make a difference.
It was Mother's Day when he knew about my situation, and so on Mother's Day, Derrick decided that he would ask me to marry him so that it would create a new memory for me and for the boys.
I still remember coming down, both our families coming together. I proposed with my grandson in my arms. It looked like it was kind of a joke. I said, could you marry a man like this? And she said, yeah, I think I could. I said, and I pulled out a ring and I said, will you? And everybody went ecstatic.
Derrick and I would often go down to the pier and go for a walk, and we would talk about everything and laugh. And I think laughter in my home has been one of the most amazing gifts that has been brought back into my home. I had laughter with the boys, but this kind of laughter, this family laughter, was very healing for me. All 4 of the boys have been speaking in the public school. They speak mostly to students in 7 and 8, and they talk about character building. In their journey, They talk about fatherlessness. They talk about struggles in school. They talk about social media. They talk about why we do some things that we do because of peer pressure. I believe my story is helping other women, in particular, that if they're separated or divorced, that there's hope. That yes, it's a discouraging time. Yes, it feels like pieces, but God can make peace from those pieces.
Well, my heart is to make a difference, and I wrote a book called The Influence Factor. And it's really about discipleship, mentoring. I want to teach people that you can make a difference. And when life happens, to know that, you know what, you can get through this.
Both Derrick and I have come to a point where we think about Joshua 1:9, that, be strong, be courageous, and do not be afraid, for the Lord your God is with you. And that to me has been the greatest comfort, that I'm not alone and that there's hope.
That we can bring hope to the world. Huntley Street is interesting, is that when I was a college president, we got involved in ministry there, and I remember coming for the first time and sharing my story on TV. And then the response afterwards was really quite amazing. I started to realize here's a vehicle of just honest people. It didn't matter what background you came from, that you could just be honest and share, this is what God's been doing in my life.
And I think that Huntley Street gave me that hope. They gave me that lifeline. It's like a trusted friend, someone that you can actually pick up the phone and you can call and have them pray with you. And they agree with your situation, that there's hope in that. And that's the greatest thing of all.